Thank you for introducing our panelists. I am Zorello, and I am coordinator of the project Safe Internet by NIC.br. Let's update the program. So as I said, we will update the project, Safe Internet. What is this program about? This is a one-year-old program. We'll talk about manners, minimal requirements, IX actions, and status of all associations. Here we have our representatives from Centralis Brasil, Alex Paraggio from the Abranet, and Breno from Abranet. Christian will present the current status in Brazil as well as the international scenario. Minimal requirements for CPEs, Lucimara, and then Julio will talk about next actions. This program was released last year during the IX Fórum 11 with the support of Internet Society, Abranet, Sinditele Brasil, and Brint. And the goal is to support the technical internet community to reduce denial internet attacks, to reduce leakage, counterfeit, to reduce vulnerabilities and failures in setting up present elements in the network, and to create a culture of security in the community as a whole. Action plan: awareness of the community by lectures, the design of a manual of best practice, interaction with associations to mitigate problems, to configure CPS, and to implement basic actions supported by manners, filters in IX, and to establish metrics and to follow closely all actions. So let's try to cover all these topics in this panel, in this session. This morning, it was said about the course BCOP, that is a workshop conducted all over IX forums in the country. We had 7 BCOPs already with 257 certified students. This program addresses devices, hardware, lab sessions, best practices supported by manners. Some tutorial sessions were produced by LACNIC, and there was a recent one in Rio de Janeiro. Talks are being given around the country during the regional meetings, where associations, they take to Brazil concepts and ideas of the program. A action which has been dealt in this program are technical meetings with the large carriers to align those standards established by manners, notifications which are submitted by the carriers, and spoofing filters which all networks should have, filter of inside and exit, and routing security mapping. That project It started last March. We had 725,000 open IP, and today we have 340,000 open IPs, a 50% reduction of open IPs. The program has got feasible returns already. Of those open IPs, a percentage belongs to carriers. We went down from 725,000, adding up large carriers with IPs, and today we have 206,000 to large carriers and 135,000 to ISPs. That is a very significant reduction in this work we are doing with large operators, large carriers. With the ISP, we had just 10% reduction of IPs, thanks to those awareness actions and talks that we are developing together to ISPs. We hope to improve processes to meet the CERT's requirements and to reduce open IPs. Here we have 4 protocols working with large operators per month. Here, number of IPs in the beginning of the year and how many we have open now. In the beginning of the year, we had around 550,000 and today 37,000. To that protocol, ASN, we see the main improvement. Actions are being taken now together to operators to mitigate problems with SSDP, NTP, and DNS. We have also started a project to develop actions with ISPs. In last October, with Abranet, Internet Sul, Telesul, Abrahost, and Abralut, in a way to discuss what is the best way to attack a problem to the ISPs. That is a very significant amount available in Brazil. We decided then to develop a program of awareness of those ISPs. A site is being built to improve the communication to ISPs. We also have an action together with the industry. CIMET, for CIMET to be able to measure not only the internet, but to check if that network where they are installed, if they are doing spoofing filters or not. With that at CIMET, with that available at CIMAP, we'll have measurement spots throughout the Brazilian network and being able to know which networks still do not have a spoofing filter. And together to carriers, we are trying to improve compliance to the minimal requirements for the CPEs. And we are also work with the industry in that manner. So we have these are our actions at the mutually agreed norms for routing security. And we want to analyze the traffic that gets in and gets out of the network to set up CEPs so they are not open. We should have some actions to apply filters to filter traffic to those open IPs. And as I said, we are implementing the BCP 38 at CIMET. Those equipments, they will be available at the manufacturing site. You can download that software and you may perform quality network measures. Ideally, these devices will leave the plant with that functionality implemented. Well, this is the program which I would like to present just in time. Very good then. Now I'd like to give the floor to Christian. Thank you.
For poor configurations of other networks, when you set up your autonomous system, you may impact the service on other networks, and other networks, when they do things poorly, they may impact the service to users. And well, we have problems happening all the time. It's the BGP works, how it works, where we announce, and this is what comes out of our network, can affect the service of any network. And that's a commitment amongst everyone to set up things appropriately. All the time, we have incidents happening on the internet due to these poor setups between internet operators or carriers. They discussed the problem, and they agreed on the fact that things are the most important to make on the networks, to do in our companies, that helps the internet to be safer. First, it is related to when prefixes are taken and you announce these hijackings of directions and of addresses. Well, they are actually impacted in the service, so for spams, for attacks, or to do any kind of activities that attackers want to do. The other times, the problems occur due to poor configuration or setups, and we distribute something incorrect, and we announce a block or on another for some configurations that we are making that have an impact outside our autonomous system, and these escapes of routes affect the service of other ISP. And the other thing related to route that affects a lot or impacts a lot the DDoS, and these attacks happen because we let packets to leave our networks with a modified source address. So we ask all stakeholders to set up things correctly so that this does not impact the service of other networks. Our setups affect other networks, and the service of our network is impacted by what we set up. The only way is committing ourselves amongst all ourselves. That's why we have this routing manifest, and we show publicly and commit ourselves that we comply with the actions that we request through manners. As I said, basically 4 requests. We ask at all the BGP sessions with neighbors set up filters so that do not brand things that should not brand. In all sessions, you should set up filters of autonomous systems of prefixes. You should have techniques to avoid spoofing, anti-spoofing techniques, changing source IP in the packets. You can do it RPF, any kind of functionality that we have today in routers, or configuring the access list, or however you feel comfortable place correctly contact information in PDB, in places where this information can be collected, so that if a network, an ISP has a problem with their configuration or setup, they can contact you directly. And make sure you inform what your routing policy is and how your prefixes should be announced. If you have IP addresses in an autonomous system, this relationship of the source of the IP address should be public somewhere. In addition, we have a similar program for IXPs where we ask for similar ones. One is to filter the IXP filtering. The other one is related to promoting manners to members, to those connected in the traffic exchange points. So have protection on the switch that makes the connections with all providers or ISPs. Have ways of contacting all the providers. Have some diagnosis tool like looking glass. So diagnosis tools. You can verify whether you are complying with manners before you complete the form. You can verify from your autonomous systems if there have been incorrect notices, or if there have been they were part of some kind of deviation of route, some hijacking, or were incorrectly forwarded, or if there was the generation of packets with changed source IP. And then we have tools that can verify this, and you can also verify if somebody else verified your network and verify the changed IP address, the source address, and well, you can also have PDB, and also for self-evaluation, we have Carlos Martinez and Freda to talk about the RPQA in Brazil to show routing information can IRR, IDD, or RIPE, so showing that your autonomous system can announce these prefixes. Well, what tools do we have available for you? To comply with manners, we have some manuals, so you access the website. We have a training lab that will be shortly available for courses and providing information. We're going to show information on autonomous systems involved in certain incidents, so that if any of you are taking part in some global incidents, can actually see whom you've impacted and take action for correction and tutorials. Sorry for the typos. We have MicroTik, Juniper, and main providers. So we can access this page and find all kinds of information. I am here more than anything else to answer questions, to get suggestions. This is a project that is a community project. So at ISOC, we try to promote things that are good for the Internet. I believe this is very good for the Internet, and this is why we are actually publicizing it. So any changes, suggestions, we do hope to receive them from the community. You add things or change things, or you can help us publicize it. It would be very good. Well, thank you very much. Christian, thank you very much for your explanation on manners. Lucimara, can you make a presentation on minimum requirements for the acquisition of BCPS. My name is Semana. Good afternoon. I'm going to talk about an initiative that was born in a group of carriers of Latin America, like NOCOP, to develop a B Corp. It's not the same as he mentioned before. It's a training part that NIC is providing in best network operations practices. The acronym means to say that this is best current operational practices for network services. Here I'm talking about a best practices document that was born within the Latin American community.
Inicialmente, na verdade, veio
It came with the establishment of a work group, the Latin American and Caribbean Anti-Abuse Working Group, the LAC WG. It was born in 2017, February, as a joint initiative, LAC-MOG, an American association of companies in the industry that also have aim at combating the poor use of the internet, and LACNIC. The goal of these groups, LAC, WG, is to develop an anti-abuse community in Latin America, and the other one is fostering the development of recommendations that are anti-abuse and best operating practices for this community. Many times we see good practices, best practices born abroad that do not reflect Latin America or Latin American reality. We had the first meeting of this group in Iguazu Falls in May 2017. It was LACNIC 2017. Sorry for the typo there. And in October 2017, LACNIC 2017, LACNOC 2017, the community started developing security issues at CP. It's that device that operators or carriers put in the homes of users that they can buy, that they use to connect to the network of the ISPs. So that's what allows you to connect to the ISPs. These issues have great native security issues. It does not have active services that are not needed. The setups are too open and standard passwords that everybody knows, and it makes it easy for an attacker to go into the equipment and install malware and attack the networks. All of this was discussed by the community in this meeting of October 2017. And then one of the proposals that came up was precisely a document that would have purchase requirements. The consumer market should have a push to the industry, to equipment producers or manufacturers, so that they would have safer products by design and by default. And that was when we had the first volunteers to draft the document. So that's when, in April 2018, we launched the first draft for comments of the community. In May, Panama, we had the first live meeting to discuss the document draft 1, and that was really cool. We had a lot of people taking part. We received a lot of comments and feedbacks to the extent that it was not possible to close the meeting with the document, and we had to extend it. And in June, we had a virtual meeting, a conference call with more participants, and we were able to get more feedback. And still in June, we launched draft 2. And we decided on this draft 2 to launch it only in English. We had initially a version in Portuguese and one in English, and it was impossible to cope with both languages. So we decided to keep just one language, the English version, and we had at the same time, we had the dissemination, the publicization of the safe internet in Brazil, in contact with ISPs and companies, so that they could send and provide us feedback. We had carriers like Claro, Net, and we continued our project. In September, we launched draft 3 for comments. We also had a live meeting at LACNIC 30 in Rosario, LACNOG 2018. And then we opened up for a period of comments that was quite long, much longer than we expected initially, because we started receiving or having the participation of various external contributors. They were contributing a great deal. Participants like Comcast from the US, CERT Coordination Center in the US, or the Carnegie Mellon University. John Brown, our speaker for tomorrow, our keynote, contributed a lot. So we extended the time for comments to be able to receive a lot of information. In December 2018, now this week actually, we launched draft 4 of this document. We had a last call at the BCRP list, and we actually forwarded the document for a technical review by MOG, that is fostering the development of the group in Latin America. And they will run a technical review by their technical committee and the senior advisors in the industry in the US. And once it goes through the technical review there, they intend to launch the document co-branded with LACNOG, with a B Corp of LACNOG and a best practice of MOGs from the US. And what do we foresee in terms of the development of these activities? Once it's gone to the technical committee of MOG, we've already received some feedback. And in 2019, we'll have the next meeting at MOG in February 2019. Their 45th meeting, general meeting, will be there to discuss comments and the final version they are revising. And the idea is to get to the final version of the document and then proceed to the translation into Portuguese and Spanish and make it available to Latin America as a whole. This is more or less the structure of the document today. And we have the explanation of all the security involved in the CPs. That's a comment I forgot to mention in the beginning. When we had our second meeting, when this topic came up, one of the participants said the following that really struck me. I remember that until today. Once I put a CPE on the network in less than 15 minutes, it's no longer mine. It's being hacked. It's in the hands of somebody else. So all these problems are explained in the executive summary, and then we have terminology, what we mean by certain terms on the text. And then we start with the requirements, general requirements, what should be provided by the vendor, software security requirements that they should comply, the need to have an update and management requirements that many people don't have, functional requirements, what should function and should not, initial configuration requirements, what should be enabled by default or manufacturer default so that it's not open to abuse, vendor requirements, and the manufacturer, it should have a mechanism, especially a mechanism so that they can receive feedback regarding vulnerabilities that are found, how we can contact the vendor, how long they're going to provide support to the equipment, so on and so forth. And acknowledgements and informative references and an annex, which is a complete table of all the requirements, what is expected, what is compulsory that they should deliver, what is the default product, what should be followed, and lastly, if somebody wants to take part in this process, the document is on the link. It's being developed on Google Docs. It's a B Corp list, a B Corp at lacnog.org, how you can be part of it, and on the bottom you have my contact details. If you wish to have further information and want to talk further, you have my contact. I'll be here throughout the week, and you can talk to me. On Friday, we'll have a complete talk on BCOP and the GTS program. I'm not going to say much more now. I have no time, and the talk will be on Friday. Thank you.
Obrigado, Lucimara, pela explanação. Júlio, se puder dar status aí.
Can you now please update us on IX? As to security for IX router services and what manners standards are for IX, out of that 5 items list presented by Chris, we have 4 of them already implemented, considering all activities that we perform, such as promoting manners throughout the community and how we incentivize its deployment. We still had, though, to validate route servers security. With that in mind, we discussed internally and published a document with all these resolutions, requirements, and actions to take. That has been submitted for hearing. We had 2 phases for comments until we wrote down the final release. That took around 4 months to be concluded. Main objectives of this document, they are deployed into 4 important aspects, such as not accepting bug-ons, and most of those validations, they had been implemented before at our routers servers. We still have to consider the source ads validations, where 3 different databases are being proposed: RR data and RPQI. Regarding routing policies, we are trying to understand what IS stubling is. That is an autonomous system directly connected to IX.br. To this IS, it's much easier to verify connection and routing. Another possible option is to validate IS7. We are also considering the creation of black hole to ISNs, the stub ISNs. All actions were listed according to 4 different types, considering duration, short, middle, and long, 12 to 18 months to the long period. And for those received ads, for anyone, communities will be inserted for each one of the ads, informing validation results. There is a very simple flowchart to be followed there. I believe you won't be able to read anything in this slide, but anyhow, that has already been implemented. And as I said this morning, the router services migrations, they started being validated since the very beginning. We have, for instance, prefix validations, Brazilian prefixes. No, he's correcting himself. ISNs for prefix validation, prefix bogons, and ISNs. We have a small number of invalid ads, a maximum of 200 of them. Within this new policy, we tick ads, but they are just shown in the thin glass web. As they are valid, the prefixes with some typos, they are not exported, but rather dropped in the entrance. BR Registry Validation Database. Today, the registry publishes in a public FTP area a file with all necessary information to carry out validation of the ASs and Brazilian addresses blocks. Around 740 prefixes which are stamped as being invalid. But before we made filters able to drop immediately and prevent further export, we double-checked and we realized that some adjustments were necessary at the base of the registry. Some of those adjustments had been made. We still have some issues with the legacy addresses blocks, things which date from the very beginning of Internet, encompassing global ISs. Let's say the company has a IS abroad and another one in Brazil. So some further adjustments have to be refined and synchronized to be able to act fully without dropping these advertisements. We also have RPKI validation and a significant number of invalids. Today, if you access the Looking Glass web, there are some new communities informing if that block is valid or not. This, for instance, is an invalid one. This is a block submitted to a different public education entity. So some adjustments are required to avoid this type of mistake. Future steps. We still have to analyze the registry database. We might solve that by next week, the latest. We will also release an update of the document defining the XBR communities, including those new communities which were part of the security process. Such a document will be published both in Portuguese and English, and afterwards a notification will be submitted to all ASNs with results invalid. So ASs will have time for corrections. Right after that, filters activations. There is no fixed date for that yet, but we guess that will happen by the end of January next year. We also would like to have a new version of the Looking Glass web, the one used and developed by the German team that's called Alice. And that's a very interesting one with some appropriated tools to visualize that community of ads validations. As to deadlines, our priority is to use the database and RPKI, the RR and asset validation. We are still going with that. That is being implemented, but not 100% approved, so it's not released yet. Thank you, Julio, for your explanations. We still have 20 minutes left, and you are all invited to talk about the importance of this program to those companies which are being represented here today. Well, Alex, you are the first. You look like you are feeling to speak. Good afternoon. I am Alexander Castro. I work for Sindilet Brazil, which is a company that represents the largest carriers in Brazil, the telcos in Brazil. The Internet Civil Framework supports security, agility of the network, which should be measured by the standards and respecting best practices. This is part of the framework and is our responsibility to comply with that. App providers, access providers, connection providers, vendors, suppliers, users, and NIC.br, which manages all PPTs. It's clear that all telcos are willing to participate voluntarily to this process, to exchange information and to learn more and to compete for vulnerability, some solutions, alternative solutions to mitigate artificial traffic, not only in our network but in third-party networks. Providers responsible for multimedia communication, mobile and fixed broadband, they are always working to improve their networks, being that transportation, access, and also terminal equipments. But companies, they have different sizes, topologies. They have several million elements of a network. They have different business proposals. There are those who supply equipment to users, others do not. And for all of these reasons, our company understood that should perform in an individualized way together with NIC.br. During the development of our program, we noticed that attacks, denied attacks, they are increasing. And most solutions to avoid them or to minimize its effects, they go through filters and traffic blocks. And we call them artificial traffic or malicious traffic. During the whole framework discussion process, we had always advocated for the fact that companies should feel free to manage their networks and to ensure the civil internet framework, where we would feel free to monitor and to act towards our problems to guarantee network stabilities. And this discussion is very timely in a technical group like this one, where choices are made jointly to guarantee a political security to our sector. And a good example of that was the block of Port 25, where together with CGI, we managed to reduce it drastically and to improve the country's image in relation to the number of spans. And we also understand that the main challenge we have to face to change the digital transformation, which is taking place all over, is your ability to convey security and trust to users and providers regarding the safety of our networks. A robust network is a key issue to foster our development and to improve online services and to make all of those available to the society as a whole. With that, we concluded our participation at this project, participating at bilateral meetings, NIC.br plus another association like NIC.br, Claro, Intel, Claro with the Telefonica, NIC with Agar, NIC with TIM, NIC.br always participating at all these meetings with different telcos. After all meetings, NIC.br present some reports, and the goal is to find telco vulnerabilities. All participants, they get that material, they perform internal tests, they identify vulnerabilities, and based on those actions, which are discussed at the bilateral meetings, some actions are taken to mitigate and to minimize the problems, such as open IPs of the protocol SNP, where we reached 65% reduction. For other protocols, we are still working on that, as we understand that that requires a continuous and long-lasting commitment. We hope we can keep on working together with NIC.br for a long period of time. We had selected experts on network safety. We identify some focal points. We included carriers. Carriers, they are divided in 4 groups. One, which is in charge for incidents on computer, another one for CPRs, another one for access network, and the 4th one addresses backbones. During these meetings, we had to understand what were those tools used by NIC.br for presenting those numbers to telcos, and how was all that information achieved. We also discussed during the meetings all the requirements addressed by the CPRs. We have to define on a minimum set of requirements which will be charged later on during the Anatel 1 and 2 certification process, and some other considerations that we have to do during the CPRs to guarantee the trust of devices and also to get rid of those unnecessary services which are still active by default, and unfortunately they are used and they represent a vulnerability. Center Brazil has a macro participation. We let carriers discuss technical issues among themselves, and anytime we need to interfere, maybe because the process is going too slow or maybe because the adoption rate of actions are low, Center Brazil acts together at the company's level to guarantee the proper focus and care to the process. And just to close, a final comment. The telecom sector has also advocated for self-regulation. And this project somehow is a way to self-regulate ourselves. We are here then without involvement of a regulatory agency, neither the state involvement, but just NIC.br together with other companies, identifying solutions, optimizing solutions, and to minimize attacks, which are responsible maybe to knock down a company, to shut down services, and that can be very negative to companies. I'll be available throughout the rest of the day at your disposal. Thank you. Thank you, Alex. The self-regulatory concept is very key in this project. There is a joint work among all companies to improve internet safety. Anyone else? Paraggio or Breno? Hello, good afternoon. Different from large telcos, our ISPs has no specific security group or a technical team to defend us from attacks or to be ready to carry out all necessary setups. It's up to us to bring awareness, and this is what we have been doing. And since that task force has started, we succeeded in convincing our users to throw to rubbish the emails, their emails, the CSERT emails. Most of them are being read now. And a second achievement has to do with identification of problems, and those problems are being treated. Now we had a drop of 10%, 134,000 IPs with a problem that is a problem which can be treated, and Abranet is available and willing to help even more. Internally, we have a working group where this group of people will talk to providers, will try to identify them by consultants to understand which are the ASs with problems,
and address these incidents in a free way for the time being. And if it's a more impactful incident, a problem that will persist, that persists for a long time, address it, well, paying consultant to resolve it. Some people work with this. It has been giving very good talks and raising awareness amongst our users to avoid their doors to be open. And no doubt it is joint work for all of us. I'm just joining the group now, and I'm sure we will have a lot of work ahead, and this is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much. Breno, thank you very much. And obviously, service to users is very important to mitigate these problems that arise on the network. Just to add, I had the opportunity of talking to two contributors that are here that are in security, and I actually verified all the emails from search. 100% that arrive to us are from corporate clients that are the very end, that they took the initiative in the company that opened up a ticket of the incident and talked to the subscribers at the end to try to resolve there. And the ticket is not closed whilst the incident is not resolved. So this is an attitude that was taken by the company, but can be replicated to all associates, no doubt. Very good. Paraggio. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Eduardo Paraggio, representing Abranet here. As people have mentioned or talked a lot about this topic, this initiative to us has been quite important. We know there are various ISPs suffering a lot from DDoS attacks, and these actions contribute to facilitate and improve the non-propagation of attacks. I believe the main message, as Breno made it clear, and Alex as well, in the case of carriers tries to close the door so that these devices are not used to propagate or reflect a text generated on the Brazilian internet. We know a lot of people suffer from this kind of problem in Brazil, from a very small ISP that is providing access to their region, to a large carrier that suffers a lot. And what happens is, as people commented, the volume of attacks increases. Before, we talked about attacks of 1 gig, 2 gig. Now we see attacks of 50, 60, 70 gigs. And it can increase 300, 500 gig. So people lost a lot of money on Bitcoin, and they're spending that money to attack others. So go there. So it's very important. And Roberto, the last meeting we had, with the presence of various others associations, Abranet was there, and there were people from Telesul, Network, Internet, Sul, hosting. And the idea is for us to get within the project to create some manuals, some handbooks, how can I configure my MikroTik for this filter, the Juniper, my Cisco. So the idea is for us to make things as easy as possible for the ISPs, as we did in the beginning of IX to configure BGPs. And we know there are a lot of people coming into the market, and there is a lot of lack of knowledge. The other direction we defined at the meeting is to have consultants. We know there are lots of consultants in the network when the ISPs are starting, help them set up and build their network. And these are the people we want to have closer to this work so that they can replicate information. We know there is a lot of work at the very end to be performed, and these consultants we have our arms open to be able to have these people with us, working with us, so that the information can reach the very end to the small ISPs. It's a type of work that involves the community as a whole, not just the large, mid-sized, or small carriers and ISPs. We have to work together to try to reduce the vulnerability we've seen of IPs that are infected, open IPs that are turned remote, used on the Brazilian internet, that impact the service providers, the users receiving services, be it corporate or residential, and we need to proceed with it. It's not an easy thing to disseminate this information. It's not easy. Abranet, Print, Abamut, and all the other associations, Internet Sul, have taken that to their users so that we spread knowledge. We hope that for next year we have some stages of the plan that we intend to perform, and this start circulating to all so that we can implement it. And obviously, the collaboration of the community with suggestions. Roberto is responsible for this within NIC.br. And if the community has suggestions, remarks, and things that they can add, nobody knows it all, right? So perhaps there's an idea that somebody in the community can share with us that it can be very effective. And this makes sense, total sense to us. Thank you. Thank you, Parajo. The idea for this panel was to combine all the associations that show the community as to how we are united towards this program to move on with actions to improve the internet as a whole. So I've been talking this morning with Christian, and we have the support of Internet Society to try to develop materials to improve the information for this program. We have a little time left. If anybody has any questions, we are happy to entertain them. Microphone? Well, let's have the microphone over there, please.
Boa tarde a todos.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robson Lima, as Parajo mentioned. Now I'm the CEO of Abranet. Well, actually, I'd like to mention, well, Parajo actually said, took some words from my mouth. Well, perhaps we should have an email. We should create an email to have a list of for our associates. What Breno mentioned is quite important. Not only that, but it's also been in the voting of NIC. Nobody paid attention to that. They didn't even know why. So much so that when we started this large movement, Abranet, Abramut, we had a vote with our colleagues, Evandro Varonil, one of the most significant votes, or as far as I know, for the short period I have been around. This work actually helped people pay attention to the emails, not simply put in the trash or leave it as spam. So I'd like to start with this, and as Parajo mentioned, to have some handbooks, things for us to post. I do that a lot on our groups. On WhatsApp, we have over 250 ISPs. I have about 30 groups we take part throughout Brazil. So these posts are very important, because after the meeting we had, we took part at the panel led by Gilberto and Parajo. Man, what I've seen in terms of comments in the groups has been frightening, incredible. Well, I had never paid attention to it. Sometimes we are attacked by our ISP. We don't know what it is. We think it's a link that is down, WhatsApp that stopped, Facebook. And actually, what I see comments talking about Bendito. I think it was David Marconi talked about that made that into a business. The DDoSs, the guy was discovering even passwords for emails and was attacking the ISP. You pay the invoice on time and you have it on this. And so I wanted to create the list, and I actually talked about the post on a WhatsApp group, and this is what moves things around, to be always positioning to them, to us as representatives, ISPs like Breno, Palangio, and the others. We perform in this action, and I've seen this actually has had results. I wanted to get your emails, and we put that on the list, on a discussion list that we have for emails. Any novelties from you, that's actually sent automatically to all members in Brazil. So I think this will certainly help. With another post that Parajo gave the idea. So it's important to disseminate that and try to reduce even further this kind of problem. We have to use technology to disseminate that. If they use that to attack, let's use it to defend ourselves. A point that I'd like to mention is to create this line not only amongst our associates and the associates and members of other associations, because you go directly to their list. When they go to the list, they will consider that an important topic. They will think it's an important topic. So that's a suggestion I'd like to make, so that we sort of close in the control even further. To improve communications is certainly what we need. Are there any more questions? If not, we can close. Thank you very much to our panel members, and thank you all very much.